We are now talking to Southern Illinois Miners Chief Operating Officer and Public Speaker, Mike Pinto. Mike, what's up, bud?
Well, guys, first of all, love the passion. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Well, thank you, man. We really appreciate it. As a Jet fan, I am a Jet fan. He is a Giant fan, but Elijah Moore, it's just embarrassing. How do you go? You're playing on a winning team right now. The Jets are actually winning. This is something we haven't seen in a very long time. They're surprising the world. Their team is actually playing like a team, and you have a disgruntled player that because he's not touching or seeing the ball or even receiving the ball, he's complaining, so he wants to be traded. It's just absolutely disrespectful for the organization and his teammates.
Isn't that any different than Chapman deciding he's not going to show up for a mandatory team workout because he's not sure if he's going to be on the playoff roster? You know, guys, the tail can't wag the dog. It can't. The tail cannot wag the dog. There's a big team out there, and one guy can't dictate what happens. That stuff drives me nuts.
You know, it's so funny because you mentioned Chapman, and Chapman is not on the Yankees roster. He probably will never be on the Yankees roster again after not showing up to mandatory workouts. And you heard Aaron Boone, and right now the Yankees could use a Aroldis Chapman right now. This bullpen is very weak in so many areas than we've seen, especially in the Cleveland series. They're using really three pitchers. This series in the first two games, they've used different pitchers, but they haven't looked good, and that's because they were not. A lot of these guys didn't play in the last series, so it hurts when you're sitting out for 3 or 4 games, and then you step in against one of these powerhouse teams like the Astros, and these guys get hits. These are the best of the best, and the Astros are one of the best teams and one of the best lineups in baseball. So Aroldis Chapman is another to me selfish player, and this is professional sports. You know this, Mike. These athletes make so much money. It's not about the team anymore. It's about how much are they going to get on endorsements? How much money are they going to get when the contract is up? How long is their contract's going to be? And are they the highest paid or one of the highest paid players at their positions? Right or wrong?
That's very true. And the game has shifted to this, not only in baseball, but you saw it a number of years ago with basketball, where all of a sudden players are saying, I want to play this place and I want to play with this team, and you're going to trade me. And again, that's the situation of the tail wagging the dog, but it's become a star system now. I understand exactly what Brian and Aaron Boone did in that situation. If I were in the same boat, I would have done the very same thing. You cannot let a guy not show up in that situation. It's too important. The team is too important.
So I want to ask in terms of the general landscape of baseball. We've seen it definitely get bad with basketball, where it seems like a player-run league. We're seeing it a little bit in the NFL right now, but do you ever see baseball getting to that point with the way these GMs and these rules are?
Sadly, it seems to be going more and more that way. It's becoming a star system now. I mean, look at the money. I think back to, I had the chance, 1985, a long time ago. I had met Ricky Henderson down in spring training when he had just signed with the Yankees. And he was making then $3 million. And I remember guys saying, oh, now we've gone over the top. Nobody's ever going to make more than this. And now we're talking about guys making $30 million. The game certainly has changed. I mean, I love this game, guys. You got to know, I'm that kid from the Sandlot. You know, I was playing baseball from the minute I got up in the morning till the moment I had to be home at night, and did it every day. And, you know, you went to the park. If you didn't have enough guys, you know, right field was out. You know, if you had less guys, pitcher's hand was out. If you had less than that, you're playing up against the wall. And so, I mean, I love this game. But there's a lot of things about this game I don't like where it's going right now.
We are talking to Southern Illinois Miners Chief Operating Officer and Public Speaker, Mike Pinto. You know, Mike.
If I could correct you really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Miners no longer exist. We, our owners, John and Jane Simmons, retired from owning a professional baseball team at the end of the 2021 season. We had an extraordinary run. And I arguably worked for the best owners in all of professional baseball. We had quite a run and did things really right and capped it off when we ended up selling the stadium and all of that. We had a giant party at Wrigley Field, rented Wrigley Field,
Wow.
and we had players from all over the country fly in and be part of our celebration of what we had done.
Well, that's amazing. So we're talking to a chief operating officer and public speaker, Mike Pinto. There you go. But I look at the game of baseball, and I think baseball has changed completely. I mean, you bring in Rob Manfred, who I think is the biggest idiot in professional sports. I just think the guy has ruined the game of baseball, and I think that has a lot to do why Theo Epstein didn't take the Met job and why he's sitting waiting for 2024 when it could open up, where he could become the new commissioner of baseball. Maybe could happen. I think he's a great baseball mind. But you look at some of these great baseball minds, Brian Cashman being one of them. We just mentioned Theo Epstein and some of these young guys that are coming up right now. Are you surprised of the way the game has really changed as far as the rules are concerned and some of the disadvantages that some of these players have now than they had in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s?
Well, yeah, they certainly have a lot of advantages now that they never had before in the game. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things about the game right now, guys, I don't like. And like I said, as a fan of the game, I'm watching the game last week. And again, I'm a diehard. So I'm going to watch that Astros-Seattle game through 18 innings and through no scoring in 18 innings and 40 strikeouts. So I'm going to ask you, is the average fan just walking away because the game is sold out now to home runs and strikeouts? And the game, as frankly, as I grew up loving the real game where there were so many more things involved, but the game has changed and guys are throwing harder than they ever have. And I credit Theo right now with he's trying to find solutions to how do we make this product more adaptable. The NFL's done a great job over the years. The NBA has made adjustments over the years. Baseball fans are diehards and they don't want to see any changes happening to the game, but I think it has to happen.
So what about some of the changes we saw after the lockout, too, with the players themselves, some of the contract negotiations? Do you like a lot of those, and also the rule changes, too, that are maybe upcoming soon?
Well, I think some of the rules changes were necessary. I was as a field manager, and so, I managed in Southern Illinois before taking over the chief operating officer role. And nobody gathered more information in independent professional baseball than we did. And I loved the shift. I loved it. It gave me advantages because I had information other teams didn't have. But it's how many balls are you seeing today that were hit up the middle that are outs now? The line drive to right field, it's an out. And so I'm hoping that maybe that brings some more offense. Maybe some guys' approaches will change now, and it won't be an all or nothing swing. That you'll see guys. A B swing can win a ball game as well. It doesn't have to be the all out, I'm going for the downs. Sometimes the B swing, taking the ball to right field, sometimes that can win a game.
Now, Mike, steroids has ruined baseball in a lot of people's eyes. I don't believe it has, okay? There are guys like Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, guys that really saved baseball. Baseball was downhill in the 90s. With that strike, Bud Selig needed to find somebody and a savior. Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa's run really helped. And then Barry Bonds, this guy was a Hall of Famer before he even did steroids. 400 home runs, 400 stolen bases. There's still no players in Major League history that has those kind of numbers. The guy's a Hall of Famer, but he's not in the Hall of Fame. He'll probably never be. Roger Clemens will never be in the Hall of Fame. This guy had 3,000 strikeouts before he even left the Red Sox. Right. And this guy should be a Hall of Famer. Half of these guys should be Hall of Famers, but they're never going to be because obviously the writers are the ones that are voting, and if they don't like the guy listen, David Ortiz, okay, there is there are some stories that he did do steroids. Why was he a first ballot Hall of Famer? When you have Barry Bonds, who was a better player than he was, much better player than he was. Roger Clemens was a better player at his position than he ever was. Why aren't those guys in the Hall of Fame? I believe, Mike, that except in combat sports, steroids should be allowed. If these players want to do steroids, let them do steroids. They'll be on the field. They're making so much money. They're making ridiculous money. You want to see your best players on the field. So if it keeps them on the field, let them do it. What happens to them in the future? That's not your problem. It's not. Their limbs, their hearts, their spleens, they're ruining their bodies. Let them ruin their bodies.
Well, first off, I agree with you 100% about Clemens and Bonds. They were both Hall of Famers. There was an era before this as well where they used amphetamines. So do we have asterisks there?
Yeah.
All right. So put these guys in the Hall of Fame where they belong. What I don't like is it certainly did affect records. And I think legacy matters. I think legacy in the game matters. Records matter. And that's where changing rules and things like that can get in the way. But I think they belong in the Hall of Fame. I think now that they have some controls, they had no controls at that point. I think now they have some controls. I'd rather guys not take that stuff and be healthy. And as a COO of an organization, an obligation of ours was to make sure our guys stayed healthy as best we could. So I think the game holds that responsibility to do that. And with that comes a balance. But you still see guys. I mean, look at Aaron Judge is still, without steroids, hitting 62 home runs.
Do you think he has being that steroids is not allowed? Do you think eventually 20 years from now, if that record is never broken, 62 is never broken, do you believe that eventually it'll be put in the record books that he was the one that broke Roger Maris's record, not Mark McGwire, not Sammy Sosa, not Barry Bonds? It was Aaron Judge. You think we're going to see that?
I don't think so. But you asked earlier about Clemens and Bonds. How does Ortiz get in? And when they don't, I think it's simply that the media liked David Ortiz. He was a soundbite. He was a friendly soundbite. He was available. I think Bonds and Clemens maybe weren't as media friendly as Ortiz was. Unfortunately, it's the writers who get the vote. Hopefully the Veterans Committee or whatever that committee turns out to be as they keep changing it will give these guys the due and get them in.